This happened last year. I was 27, back living with my mom after some health issues and a breakup. She'd just started renting a small single-story house on the edge of town. Beige siding, a sagging back deck, and a yard that ended at a line of half-dead trees. It was our first Thanksgiving in the new place. Nothing complicated. Just me, my mom, her husband Rob, and my 20-year-old sister Maya. My dad wasn't around anymore, and none of the extended family were visiting. Thanksgiving morning started quietly. My mom was already in the kitchen chopping onions. Rob sat at the table drinking coffee. Maya had the parade streaming on her phone. I got up a little after 8 and asked if anyone needed help. My mom handed me the roasting pan job first. The garage was attached through a short hallway. The door always stuck at the bottom, so I lifted it slightly and stepped inside. Everything looked the same as usual: boxes from the move, folding chairs leaning against the water heater, and the holiday cookware stacked on a metal shelf. I grabbed the roasting pan and brought it back in. A minute later, my mom asked if I could check the recycling bin outside. "The wind was bad last night," she said. "Make sure it didn't fall." I put on my hoodie and stepped onto the back deck. Frost covered the boards and most of the yard. From the doorway, nothing looked off, but I went down the steps to check properly. From up close, the bin was upright, but the frost around it wasn't untouched. There were faint impressions leading from the side yard to the bins, shallow marks in the frost that weren't from an animal. They weren't clear footprints, but they had a shape, a rhythm. Someone had walked there early that morning before sunrise. The bin itself had shifted a little. Not enough to look like a fall, just enough to look like someone grabbed it or brushed against it. I checked the area again. No torn bags, no tracks leading away. Just the curved path leading in from the trees. Nothing dramatic, but not something I could explain. I straightened the bin and headed back inside. The kitchen was louder than before. Music on, the oven running. My mom had another request ready. "Can you check the basement freezer? I thought we had more vegetables down there." I grabbed the basement key from the hook next to the microwave and walked down the hall. The basement door's latch didn't sit right. It looked slightly off-center, like it hadn't fully caught. I'd closed it the night before. When I pushed it, the door opened easily, too easily. Normally it stuck and I had to give it a couple pulls. I flipped the light switch and started down. The air coming up felt still and slightly warm, like it hadn't circulated in a while. Halfway down the stairs, I stopped. A blue plaid blanket was on the floor near the furnace. One of ours. It used to be in the hall closet. I hadn't seen it since the move. It wasn't crumpled or dropped. It was laid out, flat, in a way that suggested someone had used it. Next to it was a dented water bottle and a flattened fast food wrapper pressed neatly against the concrete. None of that belonged there. I backed up the stairs and closed the door behind me. When I came into the kitchen, my mom asked if I'd found the vegetables. I told her no. Then I asked Rob quietly if he could come to the hallway for a second. "I need you to look downstairs," I said. "Something's off." He followed me and opened the basement door. He didn't go all the way down, just far enough to look. When he came back up, he locked the door. "There's stuff down there," he said. "Someone's been staying in that corner." My mom overheard enough to step away from the stove. "Staying?" she asked. "Just stay in the kitchen," Rob said. "Please." He called our neighbor, Mrs. Lopez. She lived 2 houses down and had introduced herself when we moved in. She was in her late 50s, compact, and carried herself like someone who'd dealt with worse situations. She used to work corrections. She arrived within minutes. Rob walked her to the basement door and explained what we saw. She examined the frame, the latch, and the scuff marks on the floor. She didn't waste time. She handed Rob a heavy flashlight and told him to go first. "You know the layout better," she said. "I'll be behind you." They both went down. I stayed at the top, as she told me to. From the hallway, I could hear the furnace hum and their footsteps. They spoke quietly at first, too low to catch the words. Then a brief pause, and Mrs. Lopez said, "Don't touch anything." Another silence, another shift of movement, a light scrape of metal on concrete. "What was that?" Maya whispered from the kitchen doorway. No one answered. They came back up a minute later. Mrs. Lopez locked the basement door again. "There's a sleeping area down there," she said. Blanket, wrappers, a spot cleared near the furnace, and the access hatch to the crawl space is open. Dust and insulation on the floor. Fresh. My mom's face went pale. "Is he still down there?" "No," Mrs. Lopez said. "Not in the basement, but the crawl line connects this house to the two next to it. Whoever was here could have moved between them." She pulled out her phone. "We're calling the police." The officers arrived quickly, one older, one younger. They checked the basement door, took statements, then went outside to inspect the crawl space entries under the houses. Mrs. Lopez pointed out the foundation line and the connection points. A moment later, the younger officer called out, "This panel's loose." We watched through the kitchen window as they swung the metal access open. The older officer angled his flashlight inside. "There's movement," he said. Rob stepped closer to us. My mom put a hand over her mouth. Maya stopped breathing for a second. The officers ordered whoever was inside to show their hands. A muffled voice replied, "I'm coming out! I'm coming out!" A man crawled out from under the vacant house, clothes dirty, hair matted, breathing hard. He kept repeating the same line as they cuffed him and sat him on the curb. From inside, we heard fragments of the conversation. "How long have you been under there?" "3 nights, maybe 4. "Why this house?" "It was quiet." "Why the basement?" "It's warm." He kept insisting he didn't want trouble. He said he moved between crawl spaces whenever he heard footsteps overhead. He said he tried not to take anything. He said basements were safer than shelters. The officers put him in their SUV. The younger one came back to the porch and spoke with Rob and my mom. "He got in through the vacant house's side panel," he said. "No forced entry here. He used the crawl line to reach your basement. Maintenance will need to secure everything." They told us not to go into the basement until the landlord reinforced the window and hatch. Then they drove off with the man. Inside, nobody returned to cooking right away. The parade kept playing, but nobody watched it. Maya sat on the couch with her knees pulled up. Rob checked the locks again. My mom looked down the hallway toward the basement like she expected the door to move. We still made dinner later, but none of us had much appetite. The house felt different, quieter in a way that wasn't comfortable. That night, every time the furnace turned off and the house shifted, all of us listened for anything underneath the floor. And even months later, I still pay attention when I hear a small sound from that part of the house. The blanket is gone, the windows sealed, and the crawl space is reinforced. But whenever the heater kicks on in the morning, I still think about how easy it was for someone to slip under the house without us knowing, and how long he might have been listening before we finally found him. I got to my mom's place a little after 4 on Thanksgiving. The sun was already dropping behind the trees, and the air had that cold bite that shows up fast once November settles in. Inside, the house was warm and loud. My mom calling out instructions from the kitchen, the TV on in the living room, something boiling too aggressively on the stove. My mom hugged me the second I walked in, talking about turkey timing and oven temperatures like the whole day depended on her getting them right. My sister Lauren stood near the dining table arranging silverware in neat, symmetrical lines. She greeted me with a bright smile, the same one she'd used our whole lives whenever guests were present. Warm, practiced, spotless. She stepped aside, revealing her boyfriend, Ryan. "Hey," he said, giving a small, polite wave. He looked younger than her, early 20s, clean cut, shirt tucked in too carefully. His posture was straight but not confident, more like someone trying not to take up space. He nodded at me, then immediately glanced at Lauren, as if checking he'd done it correctly. My mom pulled him away to ask what he wanted to drink. He thanked her more times than necessary. Some people do that when they're nervous. We sat down once everything was finished, and the table looked like something from a holiday commercial. Dinner was normal enough, passing dishes, my dad retelling a story he'd told every Thanksgiving since I was a kid, my mom insisting we just try the stuffing before judging it. Lauren stayed close to Ryan, answering most questions directed at him, filling in details before he did. He didn't seem bothered, just quiet, careful. After dinner, my mom handed me a stack of plates and pointed toward the sink. Lauren stepped into the hallway to take a call from a coworker. A minute later, Ryan said he needed some air and slipped out the front door. I finished rinsing dishes, then went to grab my jacket from near the entryway. The porch light cast a circle onto the driveway, but Ryan wasn't standing there. Maybe he'd wandered toward the side yard. I stepped outside, the cold sharper than before. "Ryan?" I called. No answer. I turned back toward the house, chalking it up to him taking a short walk, when I heard something, quick, faint, like shoes scraping against pavement, coming from the far end of the driveway. I walked toward the sound. Two silhouettes came into view beside my mom's SUV. At first, the angle made it hard to tell what I was looking at. Then I recognized the sweater, the stance. Lauren had Ryan pinned against the car. His cheek was pressed against the window. His breath fogged the glass in short bursts. She had his wrist twisted high behind his back, forcing his shoulder upward at a painful angle. Her other arm was halfway around his neck, trying to pull him backward into some kind of hold. But now close up, I could see more. The tension in her arms, how she leaned her whole weight into controlling him. Her jaw was tight, her expression blank in a way I'd never seen before. Ryan wasn't fighting. He didn't even seem to know how. His legs were shaking. "Lauren?" I said, stepping closer. "What are you doing?" She didn't answer. Her grip tightened. Ryan tried to speak, but only managed a strained, broken sound. I moved closer. "Let him go." She snapped her head toward me, startled. For a second, she looked like she didn't even recognize me. Ryan shifted again, and she jerked his arm higher, too high, and his knees buckled. Stop, please," he managed, voice thin. I stepped forward. "Lauren, let him go." "Stay back," she snapped, her voice cracking in a way that didn't sound like anything I'd heard from her. I didn't stay back. I reached for her arm. She shoved me hard. I hit the pavement with both hands, sliding a little before I stopped. My palms burned instantly. My breath caught in my throat with the force of it. By the time I pushed myself up, she was dragging Ryan downward, forcing him closer to the ground. He gasped when she leaned her arm across his throat. His fingers scrambled weakly against the asphalt, unable to find leverage. "Lauren, stop!" I shouted. She didn't look at me. Her breathing had turned fast and uneven, like she was running on adrenaline alone. She braced one knee into his back, trying to get more control. Ryan wheezed, his breath high and panicked. I grabbed her shoulder again. She twisted with startling speed, her elbow grazing my jaw, and shoved me off a second time. I stumbled back into the bumper of the SUV, the metal thudding painfully against my hip. That's when the front door slammed open. My mom's voice cut across the driveway, sharp and terrified. "Lauren, what are you doing?" My dad reached us seconds later, moving faster than I'd seen him move in years. He grabbed Lauren by the upper arm. "Enough!" She jerked once, like she might fight him too, but the motion ran out of steam halfway through. She froze, breath heaving. Ryan collapsed fully onto the pavement, coughing hard, his injured arm dangling uselessly at his side. My mom fell to her knees beside him. "Oh my God, Ryan, sweetheart, look at me. Can you breathe?" His reply was barely a sound. My dad's voice was quieter now, strained. "Inside," he said to Lauren, but he didn't force her. She didn't move. I took out my phone, hands shaking. "I'm calling an ambulance." Lauren took one step toward me. "No, don't, please, don't." My dad blocked her instantly. The dispatcher answered, and I forced myself to speak steady. "My sister hurt her boyfriend. His breathing is labored and his shoulder looks dislocated." As I talked, Ryan tried to sit up and failed, his whole body jolting in pain. My mom kept him leaning forward, murmuring calmly even though her hands were trembling. Lauren backed against the car, arms wrapped tight around herself, eyes darting between Ryan and my dad. Her breathing was still fast, almost frantic. "He lies," she said softly. "He lies all the time." My dad didn't answer. The ambulance arrived fast, sirens echoing through the street, red and white lights washing over everything. Paramedics approached with calm urgency, kneeling beside Ryan, checking his pulse, his throat, his shoulder. "He's in a lot of pain," one said. "We need to get him to the hospital." They lifted him onto a stretcher. My mom climbed in with him, brushing his hair back, whispering that he was going to be okay. As the doors shut, Lauren took one small step forward, but stopped when my dad exhaled sharply. The ambulance pulled away. Inside the house, the warmth felt heavy. Lauren stood in the living room, staring at nothing, arms still locked across her body. My dad asked her what happened. She didn't give much, just fragments. He wasn't listening. Things got out of hand. I didn't think it would go like that. Nothing that explained anything. My mom called from the hospital a while later. They'd sedated Ryan to reset his shoulder. His throat and chest were bruised. "This wasn't the first time," she said quietly. "He told the doctor she's grabbed him before." Lauren didn't deny it. She didn't say anything. The police returned later after speaking with hospital staff. They asked for statements, checked injuries, took notes. When they asked Lauren direct questions about past incidents, about bruises they'd seen, she couldn't answer them, or wouldn't. When they finally informed her she needed to come with them, she didn't argue. She placed her hands behind her back without being asked. They cuffed her gently. She didn't look at us while they led her out. The squad car's lights flashed blue across the walls, then faded as it turned the corner. The house went quiet again. I haven't gone back for Thanksgiving since that year. My parents still host it, but the holiday doesn't feel the same. They stopped speaking to Lauren a few months after the arrest. Too many excuses, too many moments where they realized they didn't recognize her anymore. Ryan pressed charges once he was able to talk clearly, not for revenge, for safety. Sometimes I still think about that driveway, the cold concrete, the quiet neighborhood, the tiny sound that made me step outside. If I'd ignored it, if I'd waited even a minute longer, things would have ended differently. For everything that fractured afterward, I'm grateful I was there. She was seconds away from doing something none of us could ever take back. Thanksgiving has never been peaceful for my family, but that year it felt like the house was pushing me out. This was 2019. I was 21, back home after a rough semester where I dropped a couple classes and got sick enough that my doctor told me to slow down. My parents meant well, but every conversation turned into a status check. Was I re-enrolling, eating better, planning ahead? By 6 in the evening, the kitchen was full of leftover heat. Football was blasting from the living room, and my mom was deep in a conversation about someone's divorce. My younger cousins kept running around the table, and every room felt too close. I told my parents I was going to take my bike out for a short ride on the trail behind the neighborhood. "Back before dark," my mom said. My dad waved at me without looking away from the game. The cold air outside was a relief. The sky had that washed-out blue-gray you get right before full dark. I rolled my bike down the driveway, crossed the quiet street, and slipped through the opening in the fence where the Greenbelt Trail started. The noise from the neighborhood faded instantly. No dishes, no voices, no TV. Just the steady crunch of my tires over dirt and the faint smell of wet leaves. The loop is about 3 miles. I'd ridden it since I was 12. The first stretch is gentle, flat ground, thin pines on both sides, a shallow curve every few yards. I let my brain drift while my body did the familiar pattern. Stand for the small climb, lean into the curve, breathe with the rhythm of the pedals. A few minutes in, I noticed how quiet it was. Even in the woods, you usually catch something from the houses nearby. A dog barking, a car door, music from a backyard. That night, nothing. Just the cold air and the sound of my own breathing. It wasn't creepy exactly, just off. I kept going. The far side of the loop has a long downhill with a sharp left at the bottom. I'd ridden that curve 1,000 times. If you hit it right, you can take the whole thing in one smooth motion without braking. I reached the top of the hill and let the bike roll. Gravity pulled me faster. The trees blurred into stripes of gray and black. I hovered my fingers over the brakes but didn't touch them. The left turn rushed up. I shifted my weight, ready to lean. That's when I saw it. A thin, dull line stretched between 2 trees at chest height, maybe 10 feet ahead. It caught what little light was left just enough to flash once. I didn't have time to react, not even enough time to swear. The cable slammed across my upper chest and shoulder. My entire body snapped backward. My hands tore off the handlebars, and the bike shot out from under me. I hit the ground on my back hard enough that my vision went white. All the air left my lungs in one ugly sound, and for a moment I couldn't inhale. I felt something shift deep inside my chest, sharp and wrong. When sound came back, it wasn't wind or leaves. It was voices. I turned my head, slow and careful. Pain shot down my right side and into my neck, and my arm didn't want to move. My vision blurred for a second, then cleared enough to show 3 men sitting on a fallen tree about 30 yards away. They were dressed in hunting camo with orange vests thrown over the top. An open case of beer was on the log between them, empties scattered in the leaves. One of them, a stocky guy with a gray beard, noticed me looking. He lifted his hand and held up 4 fingers. "Number 4, he said, grinning. "Told you somebody'd still be out here today." The man next to him, heavier and wearing a dirty baseball cap, laughed. "Hey, that one barely got any lift, half a point." All 3 of them laughed like they were rating a backyard stunt video. None of them stood up. None of them asked if I could breathe or move. For a few seconds, I just lay there, trying to get my lungs to work. Every shallow breath felt like a blade scraping inside my ribs. My collarbone felt loose, like something was grinding under the skin. The cable had left a deep welt across my chest, already throbbing. Fear didn't hit all at once. It came in a slow, cold wave when I realized how helpless I was. If those men decided to walk over, I couldn't do anything. My right arm was useless, and every movement made my chest flare hot and bright. It was Thanksgiving night. Nobody else was out. Nobody would hear me if I yelled. I forced myself to roll onto my left side. The movement made me gasp. My vision dimmed at the edges, but I stayed conscious long enough to get onto my knees. The bike was a few feet away, still on its side, front wheel spinning. One of the men whistled. Another said, "Look at him go." I pushed myself upright. My legs shook. I grabbed the handlebars with my good hand and used the bike like a walker. Each step felt like something tearing. The laughter behind me didn't stop. As I moved away, one of them called out, "Happy Thanksgiving!" in a mocking cheer. I kept my eyes on the gap in the fence ahead. I took the trail in short bursts, walk a few steps, stop, breathe shallow, wait for the dizziness to fade. The cold air made my lungs sting. At some point, the laughter disappeared into the trees, replaced by the muffled hum of distant houses. When I finally reached the break in the fence, a woman walking a small dog froze when she saw me. Her expression shifted instantly. "Are you all right?" she asked, dropping the leash. "I need an ambulance," I said. My voice sounded thin. "There's a steel cable on the trail." She guided me to sit on the curb and called 911. The dog pressed against her leg, staring at me like it understood something was wrong. The first squad car showed up within minutes, then the ambulance. A paramedic checked my pulse, asked me what day it was, and had me hold as still as possible while he braced my shoulder. At the hospital, X-rays confirmed a broken collarbone and several cracked ribs. Breathing hurt. Talking hurt. Everything inside my chest felt displaced. Later that night, a detective came in with a notebook and asked me to go through everything from the start. When I finished, he said officers found the cable still tied between the trees and cut it down. They collected the beer cans, cigarette butts, and a crushed cardboard box near the log where the men had been sitting. "Any cameras back there?" I asked. He shook his head. No houses had a clear line of sight. The parking lot didn't have cameras. They checked for trucks earlier in the evening, but nothing traceable. They ran fingerprints, but nothing matched. A week later, he called to say they were closing the case. Not enough evidence. No suspects. The city put a chain across the entrance to the trail after that. They posted a sign, but never bothered removing the cable scars from the trees. You can still see the faint groove where it had been pulled tight. My injuries healed eventually. The welt across my chest faded, but never disappeared completely. Sometimes it still aches when the weather shifts. What stayed with me worse than the pain was the memory of those men laughing like it was entertainment. I don't ride on wooded trails anymore. Even walking near them puts a knot in my stomach. It wasn't the cable that got to me. It was how normal they were about it. How easily three strangers decided that hurting whoever passed by was something to do on a holiday night, and knowing they walked away like nothing happened. This happened 2 years ago, over Thanksgiving weekend. I was 26 at the time, and my own family was out of state for the holiday, so I ended up spending Thanksgiving with my best friend, Melanie. We'd known each other since middle school, and in all those years we'd survived failed friendships, breakups, moves, and all the stupid growing pains that come with your early 20s. Her parents had watched me grow up almost as much as mine had. Their house was the one constant place outside of my childhood home where I felt completely safe. That Thanksgiving, Melanie didn't even give me the option of staying alone. My mom had flown out to visit relatives, and my cousins were all busy with their own plans. Melanie texted me a simple, "You're coming here, don't argue," and when I showed up at her door later that afternoon, her mom was already hugging me and insisting I looked like I hadn't eaten all week. The house was warm and bright and smelled like roasting turkey, onions, and whatever cinnamon candle her mom considered essential for the holidays. It was the kind of cozy chaos I hadn't realized I'd been craving. Melanie's house is one of those older two-story places sandwiched between almost identical houses on a narrow street. The living room sits tight against the front windows. The staircase runs up the right side, and a long hallway leads to a small kitchen that always feels too warm once the oven's been on for an hour. Upstairs, there are 3 bedrooms and a single bathroom. I'd never actually stayed overnight before, but I knew the downstairs by heart. When I walked in, Melanie was already in joggers and a sweater with her hair in a loose bun, moving back and forth between the stove and the counter like some kind of frantic sous chef. Her mom was in full holiday mode. Her aunt hovered nearby, offering commentary no one asked for, and a quiet neighbor couple had arrived early with a pie. Kids from next door ran in circles through the living room, pretending the hallway was a racetrack. It all felt warm, familiar, and loud in the best possible way. Somewhere upstairs, footsteps paced back and forth. A door opened, closed, and opened again. "Your brother already here?" I asked as I helped Melanie with the potatoes. She made a face. "Unfortunately, he came in last night. He's being weird today. You'll see." Her older brother Tyler had moved out long before I became a regular in their house. I only remembered him in vague impressions: tall, loud, slightly arrogant, and always on the edge of either bragging or lecturing someone. In my head, he was more of a presence than a person, the older brother who drops in sometimes, who I rarely saw. We were arranging rolls on a tray when a man's voice spoke behind us. "Smells incredible in here." I turned and saw Tyler leaning in the doorway. He had that posture some guys use to make themselves look casual while clearly wanting attention. Clean-shaven, hair neatly cut, wearing a flannel shirt with rolled sleeves. He looked more put together than the version of him I remembered. "Hey," he said, smiling like he expected something back. "You must be the famous best friend." I shook his hand. His grip was warm and firm, just a little too firm, the kind that felt like it was meant to communicate something. Melanie nudged him with a towel. "Ignore him. He's trying out a new personality today." He smirked and wandered into the living room as if the entire house belonged to him. At dinner, he sat directly across from me. He was charming in a way that seemed rehearsed, like someone who had recently decided he was going to be a better person and was performing it for an audience. He teased his mom, cracked jokes with the neighbor couple, and complimented the turkey as if he were a restaurant critic. But every time I spoke, even if it was just to pass a dish, his eyes flicked toward me. Not in a rude way, not in a lingering way, but he always seemed to register where I was in the conversation and how I reacted to things. When Melanie mentioned my job, he jumped in right away. "You work downtown?" "Yeah," I said. "Coffee shop. Late shifts?" "Sometimes." "You walk home?" "Depends." "You live alone?" "Yeah." "What floor?" I paused. "Second." "That's not too bad. Stairs suck if you're hauling groceries." The line could have been nothing, but something about the casual precision of his questions kept poking at me. Melanie noticed too, because she quickly changed the subject. Still, throughout dinner he kept circling back to me. asking about my neighborhood, my commute, whether my building had cameras, which blocks I usually avoided at night. Nothing he asked was technically inappropriate, but the pattern was wrong. After dinner, the house shifted into that soft, post-meal haze, too full to clean yet, too tired to disperse. Melanie's mom eventually restarted the cleanup, her aunt poured more wine, and people drifted between the living room and the kitchen. I ended up sitting on the couch with Melanie on the floor in front of me, sorting a deck of cards. Tyler sat next to me again, not at the other end of the couch, not in a nearby chair, directly next to me, close enough that I could feel the warmth coming off him through his shirt sleeve. "So," he said quietly, "you like living alone?" "It's fine," I said. "Ever get nervous walking home late?" he asked. "City gets different after midnight." "I'm careful." He smiled slightly. "You seem like the careful type. Most people aren't." Something in his tone made my shoulders tighten. Melanie looked up at me once, maybe having sensed a shift, but her aunt pulled her attention back into the game she was trying to start. "You know," Tyler continued, lowering his voice, "Mel used to talk about you a lot. I had this picture in my head for years. You're not what I expected." "How so?" "More composed," he said. "More grown." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. Eventually, Melanie's mom declared it bedtime. The lights dimmed, people shuffled upstairs, and the house settled into quiet. Melanie showed me to the guest room and pointed out the bathroom across the hall. Her parents' room was at the end. Tyler's was next to hers. She hesitated. "Was he weird?" "A little," I said, "but nothing serious." Melanie frowned. "He's trying really hard to be this new person. Sometimes it comes off. If he bothers you, tell me, okay?" I promised I would. The guest room was small, but warm, with a soft blanket and a lamp that made everything look cozy. I crawled into bed, exhausted, and fell asleep to the hum of the heater and the muffled sounds of a house full of sleeping bodies. Sometime after 2, I woke up with my mouth painfully dry. The heater had been running non-stop. My throat felt like chalk. I tried to roll over and ignore it, but the feeling only got worse. Eventually I got up, pulled my hoodie on, and quietly opened the door. The hallway was dim. The nightlight near the bathroom cast a weak orange glow. Melanie's door was shut. Her parents' door was shut. Tyler's door was cracked open about an inch, darkness pressing against the sliver of light. I tried not to look at it too long. I slipped into the bathroom, filled a cup from the sink, and drank until my throat eased. When I turned off the faucet, I noticed how loud the silence felt. I stepped back into the hallway, and someone was breathing in the darkness, not loud, but unmistakable. I froze. Then Tyler moved, just enough for the nightlight to catch the edge of his face. He had been standing across from the guest room door, still as a statue, as if he had been waiting there for a long time. "Hey," he whispered. His voice was calm, too calm. "Didn't mean to scare you." He wasn't rumpled. He didn't look like someone who had just woken up. He looked exactly like he had downstairs, collected, alert, fully present. "I just needed water," I said. "Yeah," he murmured, stepping closer. "I heard you." Barefoot, he moved silently, closing half the distance between us. The hallway wasn't wide to begin with, but with him standing there, it felt like it had shrunk. "You okay?" he asked. "You look tense." "It's late," I said. "I just want to sleep." He tilted his head, studying me like I was something under glass. "You know," he said softly, "you carry yourself like someone who's had to watch her back. Not many people your age pick up on the world like that." I didn't respond. I felt something crawl up the inside of my chest. Instinct or warning, I wasn't sure. He stepped a little closer, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth coming off him. The nightlight caught the edge of his eyes, and he didn't look sleepy at all. "I'm not trying to freak you out," he said. "I just notice things." I tried to step toward the guest room. He matched the movement immediately, blocking the most direct path without looking like he was. "You surprised me tonight," he continued. "I didn't expect you to walk in looking so different." Groan. My breath hitched, and his expression shifted like that small reaction confirmed something for him. "Mel talked about you all the time," he whispered. "Where you two used to hang out. That guy who stared at you at the bus stop. The time some drunk followed you for half a block. I remember all of it." That cold pulse moved through my chest again. "You don't know me," I said. "I could," he whispered. He lifted a hand, not fast, not slow, but purposeful, like he expected me to stay still and accept whatever came next. "Don't," I said sharply. He froze. Something irritated flashed behind his eyes before smoothing out again. "You're misunderstanding me," he said quietly. "I'm just trying to look out for you." His hand lowered, but only barely. He stood close enough that his breath warmed the space between us. The hallway felt like a tunnel with only one exit, and he was standing in the middle of it. "You're shaking," he murmured. "You don't have to be scared." Before I could respond, a floorboard creaked. Both of us turned. At the far end of the hallway, Melanie's parents' door cracked open. A strip of bright yellow light spilled across the carpet. Someone shifted inside the room. A toilet flushed a moment later. Tyler stepped back instantly. Too instantly, like someone who'd practiced hiding something. His expression softened into a neutral, harmless smile. His posture straightened. He even laughed under his breath like things had been perfectly normal. "We were just talking," he said louder, in a tone meant for an audience. "Didn't mean to keep you up." He backed away toward the stairs and disappeared into the dark. I slipped into the guest room and locked the door. My hands shook so badly that I had to try twice to get the lock to click. I didn't sleep again. I just lay there staring at the thin glow under the door, waiting for any shadow to move across it. In the morning, the house was bright again. Coffee brewed, sunlight spilled through the windows, and everyone acted like it was the same cheerful house it had been the day before. Tyler sat at the table scrolling on his phone, looking calm and rested. "Morning," he said. "Sleep okay?" "Yeah," I lied. Melanie watched me all through breakfast with an expression that said she believed exactly none of what I was pretending. On the way home, she texted, "You were off. What happened?" I called her and told her what I could. The hallway, the way he stood waiting in the dark, how he stepped closer when he thought we were alone, what he said. She went quiet for a long time, then said softly, "I believe you," and I heard the disappointment and fear in her voice. "I'm sorry. I thought he was better." A few weeks later, she texted me again. "Did he ever message you?" I replied, "No. Why?" She took a moment. "He asked me for your number, said you two had a moment, said you were giving mixed signals. I told him no. He didn't take it well." The cold feeling from that hallway came back immediately. "Thanks for telling me," I typed. "Always." She wrote. After that, I muted every account he could use, avoided their neighborhood entirely, and planned meetups with Melanie carefully. I never saw Tyler again. Nothing dramatic happened. No messages, no sudden appearances, no threats. Just silence. But now, when I wake up thirsty in the middle of the night and walk down my own hallway, I still feel the same instinct kick in, the same awareness, the same tension in my back, the same need to glance toward the shadows across from my bedroom door. I know no one is there. I still look every single time. This happened last year, the week of Thanksgiving. I was 27, back living with my mom for a while in the city after some health stuff and a breakup. I'd picked up shifts at a coffee shop downtown and spent most days trying to rebuild a routine without thinking too hard about what had fallen apart. Thanksgiving was at my cousin Tasha's place that year. She'd just moved into a narrow 2-story house in an older urban neighborhood where all the homes were pressed tight together, each separated by little walkways barely wide enough for trash cans, street parking only, cracked sidewalks, a liquor store on one corner and a church on the other. Not unsafe, but never fully quiet. Mom showed up with her mac and cheese, my uncle brought a turkey, and Tasha promised she'd handle everything else, which meant there would be a lot of store-bought food pretending it wasn't. When we walked in, the house was already full. The game blaring, kids sliding around in socks, the whole place smelling like spices and oven heat. I did the hug rotation, set down the dishes, and slid into the chaos. Nothing felt strange yet. The only odd thing was how distracted Tasha seemed. She kept checking her phone in the hallway instead of at the counter like usual. At one point, I caught her pulling the blinds up just enough to peek at the street before letting them fall again. When I asked if everything was okay, she brushed it off. Something about a neighbor taking her parking spot. Something about the block being busy today. I didn't push. Holidays make people weird. We'd been there about an hour when the doorbell rang. It cut through everything because no one in our family uses the doorbell. People just walk in. The game quieted. A couple kids paused mid-shout. My Aunt Denise wiped her hands on a towel and opened the door. From where I stood, I could see the doorway, but not the person outside. I heard a man's voice, low, strained, saying something like, "Hey, sorry to drop by." Aunt Denise stiffened. Her shoulders lifted, then settled again as she forced a smile. "Wow," she said, a little too bright. "It's been a long time." She stepped aside and let him in. He looked mid-30s, maybe 10 years older than me. Brown hair cut short, a dark jacket zipped halfway. He carried a grocery store pie in one hand, a plastic bag in the other. His face was the kind you might forget the moment you turned away. He gave a stiff smile. "Didn't mean to crash anything. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by, say hello." Aunt Denise cleared her throat. "Everyone, this is Fred. He used to work with Monique." Monique is her older daughter. She moved out of state a while ago. I hadn't seen her in person for years. Someone handed him a beer. The game went back up. A couple people nodded politely. He blended into the noise like a shadow that had wandered into the wrong room. I went back to the kitchen to help Tasha, but I kept glancing toward him. He wasn't talking to anyone, just scanning the room like he was looking for someone specific. Then his eyes landed on me. No dramatic pause, no creepy grin. Just a small flicker of recognition that didn't make sense because I'd never seen him before. He looked away. I did too. But it left something in my stomach, like a dropped bead rolling somewhere I couldn't reach. A few minutes later, I sat on the couch between my brother and one of Tasha's kids. The game filled the room. People were talking over each other, a normal holiday mess. The cushion dipped beside me. "Mind if I sit?" a voice asked. I looked up. Fred stood there holding his plate. "Go ahead," I said. "Plenty of space." He sat closer than I expected. Polite crowded, not stranger crowded, but close enough to notice. For a bit he just watched the TV, or pretended to. "So," he said eventually, "you're Denise's niece?" I said. "Sort of. We're just family." He nodded. "You're older than I thought." I didn't know what that meant, so I didn't reply. "How old?" he asked. 27. Another nod. "You working or in school?" "Both. Mostly work." "Where at?" "Coffee shop downtown." He shifted, angling toward me. "You doing early mornings or late closes?" "It varies." My throat tightened a bit. "Why?" "Oh, I used to do food service," he said. "Closing sucked. Walking out alone at night. You take the bus or drive?" My brother scrolled on his phone beside me, oblivious. "It depends," I said. "How far do you live from the shop?" he asked. "Long commute?" I kept my eyes on the TV. "Not really." "Apartment or house?" "Apartment." He nodded again, filing it away. "Ground floor or upstairs?" I looked directly at him now. "I'm not sure why that matters," I said. He smiled like I'd teased him. "Just talking." The whole conversation stayed low under the house noise. If anyone looked over, it would have seemed harmless. It didn't feel harmless. I got up. "I'm getting something to drink. Want anything?" "Nah," he said. "I'm good." I lingered in the kitchen longer than necessary, rinsing a dish I wasn't using. My pulse hadn't gone down. Tasha walked in. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "Who is that guy?" She didn't look up from wrapping leftovers. "He used to work with Monique, years ago." "Why is he here?" "That's complicated," she said. I'll explain later. Someone called her from the dining room. She slipped out. When I returned to the living room, Fred wasn't on the couch. Relief hit me hard enough to make me exhale. Then he appeared behind me. "Hey," he said softly. "Do you know where the forks are?" I pointed to the drawer literally next to him. He smiled but didn't move. "How long you been at the shop?" he asked. "You ever have to close alone?" I lied. "Not really." "You got cameras back there?" he asked. "That parking lot's rough." I lied again. "We're fine." He kept going, asking what street I lived near, if my building had multiple entrances, if the hallways were well lit. All of it wrapped in a tone that pretended to be small talk but wasn't. Every time I stepped away, he drifted behind me. Not obviously, just always near. By evening, families were gathering coats and leftovers. Mom pressed the car keys into my hand. "Go check if we got a ticket," she said. "You know how this street is." I stepped outside. Cold air cut through my jacket. Streetlights buzzed along the block. The car was half a block down, no ticket. I unlocked it and was about to climb in when a sharp rustle came from the narrow side yard between Tasha's house and the neighbors. A shape shifted in the dark. Fred stepped into the thin strip of porch light. He had no pie, no drink, no excuse. "Hey," he said. "We didn't finish our talk." My pulse hit my neck. "There's nothing to finish," I said. He took a step toward me. "I just worry about you. You're working late. You said you walk to the bus sometimes. City can be dangerous." "I didn't tell you my schedule." He smiled, but it was different now, no politeness behind it. "You'd be surprised what people post online," he said. "I see your stuff sometimes. That Halloween costume you wore, that was cute." My stomach dropped. "We're not friends online." "You don't have to be friends to see things." His voice softened. "People tag you. You tag others. The internet connects everything." He took another step. "I saw you on Monique's page a few weeks ago," he said. "I like that picture. You were standing outside your building. The stairs behind you, kinda steep." I hadn't realized the stairs were in the background of that photo. He stepped closer, forcing me against the car. "You should give me your number," he said, "just so I know you're safe." "No." "I'm not a bad guy," he said. "Ask your aunt, ask Monique. I just want to look out for you." "Hey!" someone shouted from the porch. We both turned. It was one of the younger cousins, framed by the porch light. "Mom said we're leaving soon," she called. Then squinting, "Everything okay?" Fred stepped back instantly, smile snapping into place. "Yeah," he said lightly. "Just talking." I got into the car without answering and started the engine just to put noise between us. By the time I pulled up in front of the house, he was gone. Inside, the goodbye routine blurred. Mom took one look at me and didn't linger. The whole ride home, she kept glancing at me like she wanted to ask something but was afraid of the answer. That night, she called Aunt Denise. I heard her pacing the hallway while Denise explained, voice shaky. Monique had known Fred years ago. He'd made her uncomfortable, waiting near her car after late shifts, asking invasive questions, following her online long after she left the job. She blocked him everywhere. They thought he'd moved on. They didn't know how he found Tasha's new place. The next day, Mom had me file a police report. The officer typed while I talked. "He didn't touch you?" he asked. "No." "Didn't threaten you?" "No." "We'll document it. If you see him again, call us, but he hasn't committed a crime." That sentence stayed with me longer than anything Fred said. For a while, nothing happened. Winter settled in. I changed my work habits, avoided closing alone, stopped posting anything that hinted at where I'd be. A part of me pretended it was over. Then, one night in January, my phone pinged. New message requests. I opened it without thinking. The first message was from early October. "Hey, you live off street, right?" It was my street, but not the main part. The smaller cross street. The one you only remember if you've stood right beneath the sign. The second message was a week later. "Saw you walking home the other night." You should be more careful. Somebody could follow you. My hands went cold. The third was dated a few days before Thanksgiving. We'll probably run into each other soon. The profile picture was blank. No mutual friends. But the username matched the email Monique had given police months earlier. I blocked it. Then I opened the message archive for my building's group chat, the one the landlord made after someone's bike got stolen. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, someone posted a security still from the camera above our stoop. A man in a dark jacket stood on the sidewalk at midnight, facing the building but not stepping closer. The caption said, "Does anybody know this guy?" No one had answered. The image was grainy, most of his face washed out by the streetlight. But the way he stood, the angle of his shoulders, the haircut, the jacket, hit me like a fist. The timestamp was 3 days before that last message. 10 days before I saw him step out of the darkness beside my cousin's house. I never saw him again after that night. The officer was right. He never technically did anything. But every time I walk home now, I map the distance from the bus stop to my door. I check for footsteps behind me. I look at the stairwell differently. I move faster through shadows. And whenever I visit Tasha's place, I always glance down that narrow gap between her house and the neighbors. It's always empty. I still check every single time.